Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Let me get going here. Hello everyone, this is Quiz the Music Man. I'm Tony Underwood, I'm the Music Man. And welcome to, I believe it's our 10th episode. I'm so awful at this, I'm going to have to uh, figure that out. And we're going to talk a little bit about your why. And you have a why. Uh, and why are we talking about it? And what is it? And how does it have to do with music? And I thought we were going to talk about music figures and all that stuff. Well, we are. But it's all going to be combined. So let's talk about your why. Your why is kind of what you're about. It's what's in you the most. The best way to explain it is, have you ever known someone and they the reason I use the Music Man is at one time I was teaching a group of kids. There were 5 or 6 of them, and the person wanted me to go to their place, which I never do because it never works out. But these kids, she had taken some of them in from her other relatives, and I wanted to really do something that was good. And they actually had a big farm, and in the barn they had cordoned off a nice room and air conditioned it, and the kids painted it with musical things, cymbals, and they put pianos and stuff in there. And so I couldn't really resist that opportunity. And the lady, the grandma, the lady that hired me, had seen me in my office and seen my music school and so forth, seen me perform. And she started calling me the Music Man. And anytime I would, talk to people or mention that this lady knew, they'd go, "Oh, you're the Music Man. Well, do this for me and do that for me." And it was interesting because I could meet someone on the street. You give them if you have your business or if you're a performer, you give them what I'd call your elevator speech, which is a 30-second intro. What do I do? And I used to tell people, I own a music school. We teach all kinds of music, voice, instruments. We also teach acting, and we have a dance studio as well. So we teach the performing arts. So if you want to take piano lessons or guitar lessons or voice lessons or anything else that involves music and lessons, dance, ballet, tap, jazz, and acting, musical theater, television, and the whole thing, come and see us. And that kind of let them know a little bit, didn't let them know a lot. And it was usually after that, which I thought was pretty explanatory. They still had questions like, "Well, what are you talking about? What dance do you teach?" And I would go back into that. And, "Okay, well, I didn't hear you say kazoo." And I said, "No, I didn't name all the instruments. So there's a lot of instruments out there. What instrument are you interested in taking?" "Well, I used to play guitar." And I'd say, "Okay, well, do you want to learn kazoo or guitar?" And it was a here back and forth. And I'm not making fun of people. I understand. I've been on that other side. Sometimes you just kind of go blank and you're not really sure what to ask. And if I have too much of a spiel, it kind of will seem like I'm leading you on or trying to push a sale on you or something. So it's very tough to get that all across. However, when the people had met this lady, and all she said to them was, "Oh, he's the Music Man. He teaches our kids." It's like they knew. I was in church arts and music for many years, and people, they go to church, and there's the standard, what I call hymnal based out of the hymnal, and then there's the quote contemporary. It's not really contemporary, but it's different, where they put the words overhead and you read them and know the song and learn it and sing. Praise worship type songs. And it's always funny because all I had to do was figure out what kind of person I was talking to and say, I'm a choir director. Boom, they knew. They knew I taught a four-part traditional choir. We had a Wednesday rehearsal, did a cantata every Christmas, did one on Easter, sang a hymn or a presentation every Sunday, did a few special things. They knew that. If it was a person that knew about contemporary music, I'd say, oh, I'm a worship leader, I have a praise band. Boom. They know. I'm speaking their language. I could sit there and explain everything to you for 20 minutes and people would still look at me and go, huh? Well, what exactly do you do? What's it to do with the church? Are you doing something there? And like I said, I'm not making fun because I've been there. It's just interesting that those catchphrases, and I began to, and people would say, oh, he's the worship leader in our church, he has a praise band. Boom. Now, I happen to have done both because the last church I worked at was pretty big and we had several different services. Some were the traditional hymnal based, some were the contemporary, and some were kind of in between. So, but I realized that the Musicman, that was my why. So it's what is kind of you're about. You ever seen a kid, he's, every time you see him, he's got basketball in his hand. And he's, boom, ba-toom, ba-toom. He'd be outside shooting shots. Anywhere he goes, he plays. He doesn't care if there's a game. He'll do a pickup game. He'll do whatever. He's watching basketball. He goes to games. He plays in the park. You'll start calling that person, oh, he's the basketball kid. He's this. Or if you have a dancer, a girl who's a dancer, could be a boy, but I've already used a boy. I'll say a girl who dances. She dances in a team. She dances at school. She dances maybe in a worship setting. She'll go to outreach and dance and do things. And these days maybe has an Instagram or something and shows it and goes to competitions or does school dance competitions. And they'll say, oh yeah, that's Addie. She's the dancer. It's kind of her why. Now, when you're young, you don't necessarily have a why, but you can get a why in your youth. As an adult, eventually you're going to get a why. It's a purpose. It's what are you doing this for? What are you doing anything for? Why are you here? You've seen people, he's a sailor, he's a carpenter, he's a this, and you see them, they're just animals. I've done carpentry and all this stuff, and I'm very poor at it. Now, the finished product is good, but boy, it's like just awful for me to get there. But I knew people who, anytime they do a cut on a piece of plywood, it can be on a rickety stand, and it can be an old saw with the blades dull and the plywood's warped and wet and the wind's blowing and rain, and man, that person can zip perfect line. And where I can get everything set up, and I use a string, chalk string to get my line, and I got a nice saw with a new blade and lights and earplugs and eyeglasses and everything, and I got it ready. I got a bank to run it by, and I do it, and it's not half as good as the other person. That's because that other person's why, that's what they're doing. So I'm going to define it as it's kind of something in your heart you escape to. So you don't know you're spending 10 hours a day doing it. You don't realize what time it is that you haven't eaten. You don't care what you're getting paid. And then other people see you doing it and say, oh, that person is in his element. It's like a fish to water, or it's water for chocolate, which they used to make cocoa. That's what that means. It doesn't mean like a Hershey bars in water. Hot water to cocoa makes a hot chocolate drink. That's what that film was about. Anyway. I talk about films. I love films. I never really worked in them. I tried some acting at one point, but just wasn't for me. Too much rehearsal and hanging around. But I still love films. And they make a good way to explain things. So let's get into how do you find your why and why do you care? Here's why. At some point, it's good to make money, but you get to a point where you're making money. And I'll submit it can be hard. And for the people that it's super hard with, they usually have some things that are happening to them, or they're in a situation that really is holding them back. For most people, you will be able to be fine. You might not have a yacht and a Rolls Royce, but if you have a fairly nice house, a car that's less than 10 years old, and a job, and you have insurance and stuff, you're okay. Now, most people, a lot of people don't have that. I would say most people. But if you're young, you don't really notice it, don't care. That's the problem. You really should care, and there should be people to help you to know how to care. But you'll still be pretty much able to do anything you want to. And you don't want to be doing something you don't like or isn't fulfilling what's right for you, because when you're doing your why, every time you do it, it energizes you, it builds you up, it makes you give off some good vibes because you've got good vibes coming in. You've got a great life, and people around you are good. It's a whole subsystem. So let's talk a little bit about your why. So let's talk about what we need. There's all these charts and things that they give, but I'm going to break it down into 4 things. So the first thing that you achieve or try to get is survival. That's a place to sleep, food, maybe some a nice job pays you the bills. You have insurance, you have retirement, you're able to travel, maybe just go and see people, go to Disneyland, Disney World, those kind of things. That's the first step of a person's needs. Next, we want status. We want people to know. Now, that might be by buying a neat car, or in my case, I bought a Harley, not just to show everybody, but I just liked it. It confers status on me I don't really seek out. But regardless of whether I'm seeking it or not, I attain it. The next is freedom. So that's kind of be able to do what you want to do. And it means the freedom of saying, if I want to go to Europe, I go to Europe. If I want to go take a class in sculpting, I go take a class. If I want to live this area, I go live in this area. So when you've attained all those, there's really not much left for you, is there? The only thing left for you is what I would call purpose. Why are you doing all this? And there is the why. So why are you? Why are you working in social services? Why are you working at a factory? Now, I got to tell you, I've met people that have worked at a place that they pick up this thing here, they put it over there, or they twist this, and they do that all day. Day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, year out. I have some people, they can't wait to retire. They spend their whole life waiting to retire. And that's a shame. Because a person just like them, right next to them on the line, I've met them, they love that. They're giddy. They love going to work. They go in, they do their job, they come out refreshed and go and do all these other things. So what's the difference in those two people? The one person has found his why and is doing it. So that's the last step. Find your purpose or your why. And now we have to figure that out. How do we find our why? It's not easy. I can tell you from personal experience, I don't know that I'm there yet. I'm kind of there. So let's go over a few things. Here's 5 things you can ask yourself, or things you can do. One is find things you do for free. What is it you like to do for free? Fish? Go to museums a lot? And I don't mean go to a museum because everybody else is going. Do you just go to a museum, look at artwork? Do you draw? Do you play the drums on your own? Number 2 is to do a joy review, J-O-Y. So write down the times when you were the happiest. Go back to elementary school, as far as you can remember. I would write down. I remember in elementary school I used to lead the singing. Back in the olden times, when school started, the first 5 or 10 minutes in our classroom in elementary school, we'd sing songs out of some books, and the teacher would bring them in. And I used to lead that singing, and I really loved that. Not because I was up there in front of people, but I just loved singing and leading and them singing back and hearing that whole thing. I loved being in band in high school. It was really a thrill. I loved performing later. I loved doing church music. I really enjoyed teaching. I never thought I would be a good teacher and never thought I would enjoy it until I was later in life. I mean, I'd been in the church for many years and given a lot of free lessons. And then I just went to work for somebody. I did the same thing. I said, well, let me see. I want to get a small business because I like, you don't have a lot of free time, but you can manage it. And I want to be able to spend time with my grandkids. So I went and did lessons for a guy, had a little shop, and I didn't even try really, and my schedule was full, and people loved me, and so forth. So I started a business doing that. And that's a very fun thing and a joyful thing. So once you get 10 or 15 of these things, look for a pattern. Now, it might not be what you're doing. You might see that I used to pass out flyers and talk to people about them. I worked at a healthcare facility for free, and I would go around and talk to all the people. And then I worked at a community sports facility, and what I did is I showed people around and talked to them and all. So those are 3 different things, but they all have one thing in common. You're talking to people all the time. You're being with people, and you like it. So that's what you kind of look for. Then the third thing is to try different things to find your superpower. Keep your lanes open until you're sure what your superpower is, and once you find it, you burn all your escape routes. So what does that mean? That means go out, try different things in the world, things you wouldn't even think you'd like, things you know you wouldn't like. Go try them. Go volunteer, go look at them. And don't turn anything down. When you tried out all these things, what are the things that you really like? What roads should you be on? Once you're there, cut off all routes of escape. Pursue that. And also find out what makes your heart race. You know, your heart boom, 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 boom. You've got a lot of people will get away from performing because they get nervous. And what I try to tell them is nervousness and excitement and real passion. It's the same bodily feeling. The same things happen. Your heart beats in the same way. You sweat, you tremble, you get choked up. You don't overcome those ever to perform. You perform despite them. And then you realize, that's what gives me my edge. My knees used to shake. I'm like, this is crazy. But then I got to where, that's great because I'm just going to float out there, and I would go out and just embrace it. And I loved it. I loved the performing like that. And then the last thing is we talked about serve others. So find your passion to serve others. If you want to help people in their health, go volunteer at a place that does that. Volunteer at an old folks home. And I say that not in a disparaging way. I'm getting there. Or if you like kids, volunteer to nurse. Go up to one of these places and say, I'd love to work here. I just want to volunteer. You don't have to pay me. I don't know if they'll do that. They'll probably think you're sketchy, but you'll probably find someone that'll let you go and figure that out. So that'll give you an idea of what your why might be. And let's look at it from another way, identifying your life purpose. So here's what you do. Number 1, what are the 2 qualities I most enjoy expressing in life? What are the qualities I have? Is it my exuberant speaking to people? Is it commanding an audience? Is it sitting over in the corner and crunching numbers all day? Is it painting, sculpting? Is it fixing a house? Is it working on a car? Uh, what are the two qualities I most enjoy expressing? Talking to people, doing things alone, those kind of things. And then you look at what are the two ways I most enjoy expressing those qualities when interacting with others. So, how do I enjoy exuberance talking to people, being with other people? How do I enjoy the ability to crunch numbers when I'm with others? Might be a little difficult, but think about that. And then, knowing those two things, ask yourself, what would the world look like? Paint a picture, if you can. Describe it. What would the world look like if it were perfect right now, according to me and according to those things? So what's my perfect world? Knowing what I love to do, what's perfect? Oh, I would love to work in an attorney's office as a paralegal because I love all these things. And then you want to make a life purpose statement that uses those questions that we just answered. So it might be something like, I want to commit myself to helping people get healthy and well, or I commit myself to helping people find the right diet and exercise program to make them healthy. Or I want to commit myself to learning law because I want to help the people, on either side. I want to help the people who are victims of crimes, or I want to help the people accused of crimes. That's however that works out for you. And then you ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how actively am I living my life according to my life purpose? So if that's your purpose, are you on a 1? Do you just think about it? Are you on a 5? Do you kind of go volunteer once in a while? Or are you a 10? Have you went and gotten training? Have you went and gotten volunteered or went and gotten a job? So where are you on that scale? 5, 2, 8? Then you say, what would have to happen to make it a 10? What would I have to do to to actively live my life according to my life purpose on a scale of 1 to 10? What would I have to do to make the scale, make it 10? Make it perfect. What would I have to do? Go back to college? Transition, I don't say quit and go get a new job. Transition to a new job, move to a new town, get training, get experience, deal with some issues I have. I want to work at a national park, but I can be scared of heights, so maybe you need to overcome heights. Those kind of things. So those are some ideas that can kind of help you when you're finding your why. And I wrote some personal things that I always tell my students and adults. Sometimes adults, include myself, make some career changes and so forth. I asked them, what would you do if you won the lottery? Let's say you won $50 million. Now, you have to exclude some things. No purchases, no vacations, no gifts. So you can do those things, but that's not what I'm talking about. What else would you do? So don't say I would buy a big house and move in there. No. What would you do with your life other than purchasing things for yourself or others, or going on a vacation, or those kind of things? What would you do? What would you do with your spare time? Make a list. Then I say go experience some things, meet people, and talk to them about what they do. And how do you do that? Volunteer. Volunteer. You must know someone that works at maybe an animal shelter, or at a homeless shelter, or Habitat for Humanity. Any of that. Go volunteer. go volunteer in an area you're already proficient. If you're an attorney, go do some pro bono work down at the community law center, legal center, help center. Go to a company that's just starting out. Go, some people that are starting businesses, and say, I'm going to give you free legal advice for 6 months, or I'll help you set up this free. Because, see, that gets you kind of engaged in them. You can talk to them about their company, or you can say, let me do that, and I'd like to come and work for a couple of weeks in your business and see what it's like. The other thing you can do is do what I call a Sam Walton, and I read his book, and he would go into people, introduce himself, and just ask them questions for an hour. And most of them would just do it because they were kind of shocked and say, well, who's this? Who is he now? But he would be in a bank and he'd say, I just got through talking to Mr. So-and-so, set up some accounts. Can I ask you a couple questions? He said, you knew about this. Or ask people that say in from church, from community affairs, from friends, relatives, or people they know. Go in and ask them. Talk to them about what they do, how they got into it, how they like it, what they would do different, if they would do it again. Join. I'm sure they're still around. It's called Toastmasters. It's so you can get up in front of people and speak. Now these days, I don't know if they're still operating. You might could do it on Zoom. You meet a lot of people because it's all walks of life want to learn how to speak in front of others. Teachers, lawyers, doctors, small business people, you name it. And you meet those people and talk to them and get friendly with them, see what's going on. Get on a community improvement committee. Save the whales, save our parks, save the trees, save a building. Get on that committee and see who the people are. Get to know them. Engage with them. Go on some Facebook groups and Instagram groups and stuff like that, and TikToks and things, and figure out what's going on. TikTok a dance about saving the whales or something. Talk to people who've retired or been in a field for 10 to 15 years. And you have to be careful because I'm not going to say the field, but I went up and Googled forums for a certain field. And I read, well, this is kind of how it went. Well, I don't like this. They'll say, let me explain my field. I'm not going to say I don't like it. They would say, I'm going to explain the field. The hours are long. When you're new, you get really awful jobs for several years. You can't work at the really good institutions. You're hazed terribly. Like I said, the hours are long. It wrecks your family. You can't start a family. You can't have a family. The vacation's poor. You're usually fired for no reason. You have no job. You're not able to keep a job. They're always looking for new people, so they're already ready to get you out. It's hard to get ahead and take new classes to get ahead because you're working so much. And you have very little say in what you do. And they'll say, so that's why I hate this job. I've been doing this for 10 years, 5 years, or I've started 3 years and it's just been this. That's one section. Here's the other section. Well, I really love my job. This career is fantastic. I wouldn't do anything different. But I must say the hours are long. They're erratic hours. You can't have a family life. You end up rarely seeing your kids or your partner. There's no benefits. The pay seems good, but there's never seems to be enough money. There's no way to get ahead. When you first start working, you have to work at some of the awful institutions. People haze you. You don't have time to go and get more training to get better. Same career, same description. Some people love it, some people hate it. So you have to be careful and look into, are they just saying they love it, they're convincing themselves? Because, if it's your why, you say, oh, I really don't have any negatives. I mean, I love this. I get to meet people. I get to help people. It's been great pay. It's been this. It's been that. Uh, so you have to kind of look at what they say, but you definitely can ask them. Uh, the other thing you can do is regress the first two for 1 or 2 weeks. Uh, Go draw some comic books, take photography, play basketball, sculpt, do a fake stock investment and follow it. So in other words, actually do the thing for a couple weeks just to see what happens. Join a photography club, join a astronomy club, and just say, I'm new, I just want to understand what it's about and go and see what it's about. Take a community college class or a community class in finding yourself or in a subject you've always been interested in, and then a subject you don't have any interest in, you don't think you'd be any good at, or would be any good at. So go ahead and do that. So how does that kind of meld? Those are just some ways to find your why. How does that meld into music and careers? Well, I'm fixing to learn you. So this is just stuff off the top of my head. If you know who Elvis Presley is, Google him if you don't. He at one point, now he didn't sell as many records. Back then they used to sell these things called records. They have them, they're coming out new again. But I'll say album is a group of music that you sell, or a single is one song. He didn't sell that many compared to people like Michael Jackson and so forth, but he was 20 to 30% of the industry. So, in other words, it would be like a person now, instead of selling, platinum, which is 1 million, they would be selling like, 150 million, 300 million. And I think the top selling album, which is a group, was around 60 million. I think it's Thriller. It was at one time a country. Who's the country guy? I'll think of it soon. But anyway, so he pretty much was the music business for a while. And how did he get his start? He's very poor, and his parents bought him a little old kid's guitar, and he would go out in where he lived, out into the poor section, where people would work when they could work, and when they couldn't, they'd just sit around the house and wait on work. And they'd play music, and he would listen in, and some of these musicians were awful good, and he would play along with them, and he would do this 7 to 10 hours a day, and he did this for years. Now there's this, I call it a myth, the 10,000 hour myth, that if you spend 10,000 hours doing something, you're going to be good. Well, that can be true. It's not necessary to do 10,000 hours, and you don't always become an expert by doing it. But it kind of describes what a person who's found their why, or found something that is very close to their why, what they do. They're always doing it. If you look at, let's talk about Michael Jackson. I mean, he had his upbringing wasn't poor, but it was very, almost tragic, because the way they describe it is they were very much really driven to be adults, the group, and he was the youngest, so it probably hurt him the most as far as dancing stuff, performing, vocal lessons, and but it made him great. It helped his talent come out. It helped support his talent. And if you look at some of the good actors, people, Hugh Jackman, I mean, he came over from Australia, wasn't known, went out, auditioned, got some great roles, and auditioned, tried musicals, tried this, tried that, really excelled at all these things. He didn't make millions of dollars on a couple movies and then cloister himself up, and then you see him in the tabloids doing all this crazy stuff. He devoted himself to his art, and he found his why, and he stuck with it. And that's some examples of people that have found their why. There's a lot of people like Beyonce, Taylor Swift. I mean, Taylor was 12, 13 out there singing in the venues. I saw a clip of her. I don't know if she was 14 or not, and it epitomizes what it takes to be in the music business. She was at a venue. It was a sports bar. You know, it's a family restaurant. You know, kind of a bar, and she was providing the entertainment. And here, this, you know, I'm not condescending, but she's a little girl, 13, 14. She's over with a hat on. Over in the corner, there's all the stands and microphones, and she's just playing her heart out. And you can see in the bar, there's not very many people there. Some people are eating, some are at the bar having a drink. You know, it's a family, like a sports bar kind of thing, and they no more paying attention to her than anything. And she had been doing this for several years and went on to do it several years more. You see, that was her why. She didn't look to external things. Now, I tell adults, at some point you switch and make sure you get paid, because if you don't value what you're doing, nobody else will. But see, she knew the value of what she was doing. She knew the value of being there, singing, getting that confidence, getting that experience, getting her name out. Everybody, oh, that's that little kid with the hat. That's that little kid with the cowboy hat. That little kid that sings. You see, that's her why. And pretty soon, when she got her act together and was confident and got her music where she wanted it and got the people behind her where she wanted it and went out as an adult, then look what she's done. She's conquered the world. She's like one of the biggest, if not the biggest act. And I saw a clip of her a few years ago on her tour. Every bit of that tour, she was on it was a long table, and her and the people that run the tour were there. She auditioned the dancers, auditioned the singers. She talked to the lighting people, the costumes, the whole thing. She went by everything how she wanted it. You know, definitely listened to them, where their feedback, but it was definitely, she had her hand on everything. She knew what was going on. That was her why, because she loves to do that. It's her thing. So that's and you can go on and on. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all these people. Now, it's tough. You know, a lot of these people you hear, built it up for themselves, when if you look at their life, they pretty much had a great life. Everybody was supporting them. They could do nothing. And then when it came time, they got the loan from their grandfather or whatever for a little bit of money. That was probably a lot of money back then. Don't let that stop you. And don't let yourself think you have to be like them. But you see, the well-to-do and the poor, the ends are very similar, because usually they have a lot of time on their hands. And we all have a lot of time on our hands now. So use your time. Search for your why. And let me share with you, when you're ready to change, don't just say, oh, this is it, I'm out. I had said before, burn your bridges. That's when you find your why. Burn the bridges to any other thing except that. Now, you want to transition into that. So if you're in a job, you don't necessarily want to give that job up. You want it to support your why, and you have it support that why until here's your job, here's your why. So the why gets better and better and better, and then at one point the why will either exceed or be level with your now. Here's your why up here. Here's your now. So in other words, if you work at a restaurant and you start performing and music, and in 6-7 months you're doing gigs, and you're saying, well, I'm making $2,500 a month doing gigs and making $2,000 a month doing the restaurant. Well, it's time to make change. And we'll get into how to monetize your why in further ones here. So there you have it. That's your why. Find your why. You can do a lot more research on the interwebs and pull out some things. And usually the good people who are talking, they will talk about other people in their area of expertise. And so if they're all alone and they say all these other people are awful, take it with a grain of salt. Look around at who they've got around them. You have other people they say are like this. And, people that are aligned with the university, people that in the community people recommend to you. Get on your groups, your Facebook groups, your Instagram groups. Snapchat and find out who's doing what and talk to friends and relatives. Do your due diligence, do that research, and listen to them. Listen to what they say. I used to go in and do that, and I wasn't really listening a lot of times. I'd hear them, but I wasn't listening. Listen, write down the stuff. Take a good eye and just see what the facts are. And then find your why. And then make your transition. And we'll talk about how to make your transition in another podcast. So that's it for today, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I've enjoyed talking to you. And I'm Tony Underwood. You can find my original music all over the place on Spotify, website, Facebook, Instagram. I do lives, I do covers. I've got a big YouTube channel. You can go listen to everything. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you have to say about my podcasts, my music. If you don't like something, let me know. Half the time you don't improve unless you hear something negative. Trolls, go for it. I pretty much can see a troll by their actions and know not to worry about it. But go for it. At least it gives me a comment on my page. And join me for lives on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 7 to 8 o'clock on Instagram and Facebook. And love to hear from you and love to hear about what's going on in your life. I'm small right now. I can talk to everybody that messages me, so go ahead. IM, DM, text, whatever it is, email, snail mail, you name it. I'll read it. And so we'll see you next episode, and we'll see you tomorrow night on my Facebook and Instagram lives around 7, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Tony Underwood Music, signing off. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.